What's up, everybody? Got another Godforge video here. Gonna do a little bit of a starter kind of comparison, kind of showcase. They're all gonna have the same gear. I'm just gonna run a level one time with them and run a boss fight one time with them each. Not like a super in-depth, large sample pool. But yeah, just a quick little comparison. I was gonna try and run them all on 151. But as you can see, this battle took almost 45 minutes. Figured, didn't want to totally waste it. You can see Guan Yu did a cool almost 23 million to the boss on 151. Obviously a lot of support and protection. Figured we would need it to keep a rare alive on 151, but yeah. Thought it was cool that he put up that much damage. But let's get to the heroes. So like I said, they're all going to share the same gear set, so right now Guan Yu is the only one with gear equipped. I guess before I get into the gear, all three of them will have their abilities maxed out and be fully ascended, and level 60. They're all also fully awakened. For the gear, you can see I kind of went stats over sets, got a mishmash. It's all pretty good gear for 5-star, except for this little 3 up here. Wanted to make sure they're crit capped. Wanted to give them a little bit of accuracy because they all have debuffs that they land, and basically want to do a focus attack because they're all slayers. For the weapon, I wanted to go with something that didn't introduce more RNG, so this helped with their accuracy and gave them some bonus damage with crit damage, and it increases the damage of ultimates by 18%. I didn't want to use something like this where it has a debuffs have a 10% chance to also spread to a random enemy. I didn't want to introduce that 10% RNG into the comparison. Same thing with the imprint. I used Kate Sith. I figured Vanish at the start of the round will help keep them alive because they're real weak, don't even have 1,000 defense. And it also boosts their attack and accuracy while they're under Vanish. So again, no RNG, just a straight 10% increase while they're under Vanish. But getting into the starters, Guan Yu is known more for being a boss slayer. His basic attacks one enemy. If they're under drain, he'll do max HP damage. And if someone's defeated, he places drain 2 on the enemy with the lowest HP for 2 turns. So more chances to gain max HP damage, or do max HP damage, I should say. Alright, sorry if there was an awkward cut there. I just kind of realized typo or some issue with the upgrades for Guan Yu's skills, but basically attacks all enemies, 420% attack with a 25% additional chance to strong hit. Says has an 100% chance to place drain 2. I think right now it's 80%. I think it's supposed to scroll up to 100%. But right now his abilities aren't set up that way. And on that 151 run that I was showing earlier, he wasn't landing the drain consistently. So I think that's why it's 80% still, even though it has this 100 in quotes, they're in parentheses. But 80% chance to place drain 2 on each target for 2 turns, and heals this hero for 15% of the damage inflicted. And his ultimate attacks all enemies, then attacks 2 random enemies. If an enemy is defeated, place initiative up 2, so boosting his initiative on this hero for 2 turns. If an enemy is defeated, also reduce the cooldown of the core ability by 1 turn. So that's great, boosting your initiative and getting back to your core quicker. And his passive is he inflicts 20% increased damage to enemies under drain. And this other passive is just the imprint that we already went over. So Lady Xoc attacks one enemy, 35% chance to place 1 stack of bleed. If an enemy is defeated, place a stack of bleed on the enemy with the lowest HP. All the starters are kind of set up similar, but based around different debuffs. Her core attacks all enemies for 20% attack with a 25% chance to additional chance to strong hit, and has an 80% chance to place 1 stack of bleed on the target. And again, also heals this hero for 15% of the damage inflicted. And getting to the ultimate, attacks all enemies twice. If an enemy is defeated, place speed up on the hero for 2 turns and reduce the cooldown of the core by 1 turn. So where Guan Yu boosts his initiative to get his ult faster, Lady Xoc boosts her speed to get back around to her next turn faster. Passive, increased damage inflicted by 2% for each stack of bleed on the target. I believe you can get up to 10 stacks of bleed, so the 2% doesn't look like much, but if you get those 10 stacks, you're up to 20% more damage. So that's why she's got the 2% on her passive. And again, she doesn't have that second passive because she won't get it until I swap the gear over from Guan Yu. Ramses has been known as a great wave clearer so far in the first 2 waves of Alpha. Attacks one enemy, 35% chance to place acid for 2 turns. Similar to the other basics, if an enemy is defeated, place acid on the enemy with the lowest max HP for 2 turns. Ultimate, attacks all enemies for 20% attack, 25% additional chance to strong hit. Place a mend on this hero for 2 turns. Has an 80% chance to place acid on each target for 2 turns. Mend is huge. If you're under bleed, it reduces it by a stack, and it's like a continuous heal. You'll get 10% max HP healed at the start of the turn. And his ultimate, attack all enemies. If an enemy is defeated, increase the turn meter of this hero by 30%, and reduce the cooldown of the core ability by 1 turn. So whereas Guan Yu and Lady Xoc are getting buffs to increase their speed or ultimate, he's just getting a straight up 30% turn meter boost. And again, deal 20% increased damage to enemies under acid. So his passive's right in line with the other 2. We'll say Lady Xoc was an early favorite of mine, with only a 35% chance to place a stack of bleed on the target. This 2% increased damage is kinda weak. Even with her core that has an 80% chance, it's still just 1 stack and 3 turn cooldown. So you're getting 1 stack every 3 turns, and 1 stack with a 35% chance of landing. It's tough to say increase this percent, because in boss fights they're long, drawn out, so it could be a huge boost to her over the other starters. But I think something they could do is maybe make this a 2-time hitter with a 35% chance, just so you get that slight better chance of landing bleeds and getting to your 20% faster, whereas these guys get it right away if they land their debuff. Let's get into the fights and make some comparisons. It is past midnight my time, and the alpha is ending in 10.5 hours. So I'm gonna drop it down to a pretty low wave, just to make sure we're not in it too long. Gonna run them with some strong supports because, like I said, they're kind of built like glass cannons, so this way they'll survive the fight, even though 82 shouldn't be a challenge for them. Alright, the first one went a little too quick, so we bumped it up a few floors just to get a little bit of a better showcase. Alright, we bumped up more again, try and get a better showcase. Okay, so obviously, like I said, real strong team around him, but cleared floor 132 in under 2 minutes, and you can see, really packed a punch, did 425k damage. Let's run him in a boss fight. Gonna try running 150 just because, like I showed at the start of the video, 151 was a 45-minute run, and I would like to get some sleep before work tonight. But yeah, brought in Aphrodite for more support and speed boosting. I really don't want to bring in too much damage. I just want to see what the starters do on their own. Hopefully they survive. Which, he survived pretty long in 151, so I don't think it'll be an issue here. Alright. Luckily we brought in the support we did, because things did get a little dicey for Guan Yu in there. But, you can see, he did the bulk of the damage. 3.35 million. Cleared it in about 6.5 minutes. He's the first one, so not sure exactly how good of a showing that is, but I will say he was hindered by not landing his drain consistently, so he wasn't getting that max HP damage, even though he did do a good chunk of damage. So let's throw our equipment onto Lady Xoc and run the same floors. Alright, here we go for 132 with Lady Xoc. See another quick performance here. Lady Xoc doing almost 400k damage, and definitely cut the time down, 1 minute 10 seconds. If I remember right, Guan Yu was almost 2 minutes, like something like 147. You can definitely see the wave clearing ability of Lady Xoc compared to Guan Yu, who's kind of seems to be more boss focused. Let's move on to the boss wave, and running her with the same sports again. Okay, now my memory's starting to fail me, so I'm gonna have to pull a side-by-side up in editing, but I believe she did slightly less damage at 3 million, but it was a faster run at 645. I think the other one was closer to 10 minutes, but I'm not 100% sure. Another great performance, and on to Ramses. Alright, he's geared up, let's get into it. Here we go, running him at 132. Alright, so that was another quick run in line with Lady Xoc. I think even 6 seconds faster, if I'm remembering right. I actually wasn't even paying attention to turns. I'll have to take a look at that after. Not a great sign, 666k damage, but good showing there from Ramses. He has been known as the best wave clearer so far this alpha wave, or I guess both the first 2 alpha waves. Now we'll bring him into the boss fight. Here we go for the 150 one. The 150 run. Alright. Ramses' run seemed to take forever. Says it was only 7 minutes 30 seconds. Felt longer, but did a solid 2.72 million damage. I think he had the weakest showing, which makes sense since the other 2 are geared towards the bosses. Through the power of editing, I'm gonna do some quick side-by-sides of everything and get a better look. My initial thoughts right now, I think Lady Xoc is still my favorite. You have Guan Yu that's more boss than waves, Ramses that's more waves than bosses, and Lady Xoc is kind of that little balance in between. She has her bleeds for long extended fights and some good AoEs for wave clearing. Hey everyone, if you made it this far, thanks for bearing with me. I recorded the beginning of the video over a week ago when I was still a little sick, but wanted to get it in before the end of alpha. And sorry, this looks a little messy, but it was the best way I could fit everything onto one screen. If you look, we have some real interesting results. I guess we'll start first. Ramses did the most damage on 132, then Guan Yu, and then Lady Xoc. But if you look at the times, Ramses had the lowest amount of turns and the quickest time. Lady Xoc was just barely behind him with 3 extra turns and 6 extra seconds. And Guan Yu, even though he outdamaged Lady Xoc, did a whole 28 more turns and 37 seconds more. Or I should say he did 28 turns total and 37 seconds more than Lady Xoc. So I think it's a little interesting that Guan Yu outdamaged her, but she still managed to clear through the waves quicker. I was gonna cut the images down to just the starters, but wanted to show that all the support heroes did kinda similar damage throughout the waves. But yeah, that's it for the wave clearing. Let's pull up the boss floor now. Alright, same deal. Still a little messy, but the best I could make it fit. And again, we kinda have our expected results. You can see Guan Yu did it 84 turns, 6.5 minutes, dealing 3.35 million damage to the boss. Next we had Lady Xoc, who did it almost the same, 85 turns, 6 minutes 45 seconds. And then Ramses, who's more of a, oh, I should say, Lady Xoc, 3.11 million, so just a little bit lower than Guan Yu. And Ramses, 94 turns, 7 minutes 30. He's more of a wave clearer than a boss killer, so it makes sense that he would have the slowest. And he also did 2.72 million damage, so he did the lowest damage on the floor 150. And again, I left all the support champions so you can see how similar their damage was. It is pretty interesting. Everyone's pretty close to the same damage, but then you have Smash, 174k, 172k, and he drops all the way down to 97k for Guan Yu. I'm not sure if he's getting credit for some ally attacks on the waves or what caused the damage discrepancy. But I think this kind of solidifies my thoughts before. I'm still leaning towards Lady Xoc, although, as this shows, not that big of a difference between the three starters, but still leaning towards Lady Xoc since she's kind of a hybrid, can do a little bit of wave clearing, a little bit of boss damage. Let me know your thoughts down below, what starter you're going to go with for Wave 3, and that's all I have for this one. Have a good one!